I just read that in 2009, Pfizer paid $2.3 billion to resolve criminal and civil liability, quote, the largest healthcare fraud settlement in the history of the Department of Justice at the time. And it obviously wasn't the first and probably won't be the last time. I just happened to be reading about that one time. And it struck me. I get why MAGA is so pissed off and cynical about government and institutions and big business. It's shit like this. They should be pissed off. We all should be. I've been pissed off about this type of shit since before it was cool with Republicans. So just imagine Big Pharma commits fraud and pays judgments, settlements, and fines as a cost of doing business. And yet, in the middle of the pandemic, the same government that should probably be prosecuting these guys for whatever laws they're breaking at the time, that same government tells us to blindly trust in their goodwill and skills in providing a vaccine in record time. Shut up and trust these pharmaceutical companies. The same pharmaceutical companies that people of all political stripes know do business the same way as Pfizer does, without any real punishment. And now, with all that receding further into the past, these fraudster pharmaceutical behemoths and their government pals go back to business as usual until the next time all of society is forced to rely on these criminals for our very survival. And it's like that for the oil industry and the defense industry. You remember Iraq? It's like that for the financial industry. You remember 2008? It's like that for big agro, the telecommunications industry, and now, most of all, big tech. Imagine depending so completely on people you think, rightly or wrongly, are corrupt to the core. Not too hard to imagine such an absurd society, is it? A society where the most rich and powerful people live by a completely different set of rules. Of course, every now and then, one of them messes up really bad or pisses off the wrong people and gets his due. But for the most part, the ultra wealthy, the titans of industry, and government officials, presidents and senators and congresspeople, and judges and military brass, safe to say these types of people get away with a lot worse shit than anyone else does, by far. The hardworking people, the masses, the 99 or maybe 98%, we'd better obey. Life is hard enough. So yeah, the system is rigged. I agree with that. Trump is at best a broken clock. I'll give you that. So I get it. It pisses me off that some people commit crimes, but because it's rich people crimes, they get away with it. I feel that indignation. But what I don't get is this. That whole vaccine thing you think is so terrible? Trump was the president at that time. The vaccine was his pet project.
We're here to discuss a monumental national achievement. From the instant the coronavirus invaded our shores, we raced into action to develop a safe and effective vaccine at breakneck speed. It would normally take 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, or even more. In order to achieve this goal, we harnessed the full power of government, the genius of American scientists, and the might of American industry to save millions and millions of lives all over the world. We're just days away from authorization from the FDA, and we're pushing them hard, at which point we will immediately begin mass distribution.
And ironically, as extraordinarily awkward as it is for me to say this, the vaccine to me was by far the best thing Trump did as president, maybe in his entire lifetime. And maybe it's the best thing that Pfizer has done too. Either way, if you think the vaccines are evil and hate how cozy the pharmaceutical industry and the government are and don't trust them a damn bit, how again is Trump the good guy in all this? The guy who struck the deal with the pharmaceutical industry to get us the vaccines? That's your boy? The guy who paid $25 million to settle fraud claims against his so-called university in a civil case brought by California and New York? The guy who avoided having Florida join that lawsuit after paying $25,000 to a political group supporting the Attorney General of Florida at the time, Pam Bondi, who later served as one of Trump's impeachment attorneys? Do you see how it works? Isn't that the type of shit we're all pissed off about? This is Trump, the guy who was the only guy I've ever heard of whose entire family, and most especially him, they're all prohibited from having anything to do with a charity in the state of New York. The guy who has paid the SEC fines on more than one occasion for willful and repeated violations of the Bank Secrecy Act, and who paid at least one fine in 1998 for currency transaction reporting violations. These are anti-money laundering statutes that he's been paying fines for violating since the 90s. The guy who in 1987 was denied a casino license by the government of Australia because its due diligence had found that he had mafia connections. The guy whose mentor was a man named Roy Cohn. This was Senator McCarthy's chief counsel. Senator McCarthy, remember him? The most dictatorial senator in US history. This was his main guy, who later became an attorney for the mafia. Roy Cohn, a man with a long career of helping the worst people do terrible things and get away with it. This was Trump's mentor. Are you starting to see a pattern? This is your crusader for truth and justice? The guy who was born with a platinum spoon in his mouth, and some have said has a golden toilet for his asshole. The guy who just bragged that he didn't like to pay overtime and at least occasionally didn't pay his workers any overtime.
And you know, it's going to lead to great things. A lot of people don't give. I know a lot about overtime. I'd hated to give overtime. I hated it. I'd get other people, I shouldn't say this, but I'd get other people in, I wouldn't pay. I hated.
This is your working class hero? I mean, most of this we've already known before he ran for president. We've known for decades. He was the scum stuck to the underbelly of American business culture before that apparently became the coolest thing to be. He has just been committing crimes and committing crimes and committing crimes and getting away with it, getting away with it, and getting away with it. Just like we're all so tired of, so disgusted with, so angry and cynical about. That's Trump's entire life. And friendly reminder, he was the president at the time the vaccine came out. It was his signature COVID fighting achievement. He promoted the shit out of it as only he could. How is this guy, the guy that made that great deal with Pfizer and the rest of them, how is he your boy? Isn't that weird? Let me just state it plainly. Trump is not the good guy. He doesn't want to drain the swamp. He wants to be the kingpin of the swamp. And he's certainly not the bad guy we need right now, which is another way of saying the strong leader we need right now, which is just another way of saying the authoritarian or dictator we need right now. No, we never need one of those. There's no policy position worthy of our constitutional republic. And for you Constitution buffs who care about what the founders said, they warned their asses off about men like Trump. Trump embodies everything that's wrong with this system of rich and powerful people getting away with shit. Just because a lot of people in that same group hate him doesn't mean he's not one of them. Haven't you ever had beef with someone in your social circle? And look, none of this makes Kamala Harris a superhero. You can love her or hate her as much as you already do, for all I care. Whatever you think of her, as accurate or as distorted as that picture of her in your mind is, place it against what I believe are the indisputable facts about Donald Trump that I just named. And with all that in mind, with all the fraud and corruption that he's gotten away with over the years in mind, fast forward to right now. Trump, the former president who tried to overturn the last election he lost using fraud and intimidation, a career-long con man, is now running for office again, currently selling Bibles made in China that also have the Constitution in them because America first. He's the guy who made the deal that gave us the Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine. For those of you who think that's evil, it sounds like that's someone that you shouldn't support for that reason alone. Meanwhile, he's also the guy railing angrily against foreign invaders with bad genes, poisoning the blood of our country. And he's reportedly planning to invoke the Insurrection Act, which is tantamount to martial law, and promising to use a little-known law that was once part of the Alien and Sedition Acts for you history buffs. And he's also promising, openly, to build detention camps to deal with these animals in what he advertises as the largest deportation in history, with, he says, up to 15 to 20 million people to be uprooted from their homes and sent to these camps on their way out of the country, or on their way to who knows where, given that most estimates of illegal immigrants in the US put it at only between 10 and 15 million. Where's he going to find that extra 5 million? A man who just got the Supreme Court majority he partially selected to grant him total immunity from most crimes. Think about how all that would have sounded before we became addicted to our phones. And then go vote.